Mark Wren stayed late again. Everyone else had left the station floor hours ago. Only the low hum of machines and the flicker of faulty lights kept him company now. He hated working the night shift, but someone had to fix the cargo rails in Dock 9. It was the farthest, darkest part of the station, and nobody liked going there, not even the bots. He carried his toolkit and moved down the long corridor, his boots echoing against cold steel. Suddenly he stopped. He heard something strange, a sound, soft and shaky, like someone crying. He turned his head, listening harder. The sound was coming from behind a stack of broken crates near the old supply door. No one was supposed to be there. He placed his tools down slowly and stepped closer. "Hello?" he called out, his voice low. "Is someone there?" No reply, just more quiet sobbing. Mark hesitated, then moved the crates aside one by one. His heart began to pound. Under a dirty tarp, he saw something. No. Someone. It was a girl, or at least she looked like one, but her skin was light purple, glowing faintly, and her hair was long and silver. An alien. She was crouched, arms chained to the wall, body shaking. A rusted sign hung from her neck, written in 2 languages. "Property. Do not touch." Mark froze. He knew what this was. Illegal. Alien trafficking. The kind that the station leaders pretended didn't happen, but it did, especially in dark places like Dock 9. The girl looked up, her eyes wide with fear. She looked so weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "Please, not again." Mark took a deep breath. He knew the rules. Helping a tagged alien was a crime, but walking away felt worse. He knelt slowly, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't respond, just stared at him, trembling. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar, unwrapped it, and placed it near her hand. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Then, very slowly, she took it, sniffed it, and began to eat like she hadn't tasted food in weeks. Mark looked around. No cameras here. The cargo sensors were dead too, probably on purpose. Whoever did this knew how to stay hidden. "I can't leave you here," Mark whispered, mostly to himself. He pulled out his small plasma cutter, the one he used for metal rails. "Let me cut those chains," he said. She didn't stop him. The cutter hissed, sparks flew, and the chains fell with a clink. She collapsed forward into his arms, too weak to stand. Mark felt the weight of what he just did. If anyone found out, he was finished. Just then, footsteps echoed from the hallway behind him. He quickly pulled the tarp back over the broken crate, hiding her under it. A station security guard walked by, looking down at a data pad, not paying attention. Mark held his breath, his heart pounding. The guard passed, never even glancing his way. Mark waited until the sound faded, then turned back to the alien girl. She was trying to stand now, her hands shaking. "You can't stay here," Mark said. "They'll come back." She looked up at him, her voice dry and broken. "Where will I go?" Mark didn't know, but he couldn't let her be taken again. He took off his work jacket and wrapped it around her thin frame. Then, carefully, he helped her to her feet. "You'll stay in my room for now," he said. "I have a place in the lower tunnels." She leaned against him, barely able to walk. As they left Dock 9, the broken crate behind them, Mark knew one thing. He had just broken the law. But deep inside, he also knew something else. He'd do it again, because whatever she was, whatever rules he'd just shattered, she wasn't property. She was someone, and he had just taken the first step into a fight he didn't yet understand. Mark's heart pounded as he helped the alien girl down the dim corridor. Every camera could be watching. Every step could be the one that gets him caught. The girl, Leary, that was her name, could barely walk. Her legs wobbled like she hadn't stood in days. Mark had to support her weight with one arm while holding his toolkit in the other. They moved through the maintenance tunnels beneath the main station. These were forgotten places. Old, dusty, filled with leaking pipes and flickering lights, but Mark knew them like a second home. He had worked on this station for 6 years, always fixing what others broke. Now he was doing something no one had done before. Fixing someone. Finally, they reached his storage unit, a small maintenance room he secretly upgraded into a sleeping area. He opened the door and quickly pulled her inside, locking it behind them. The lights buzzed on, revealing a bedroll, some tools, and stacks of spare parts. It wasn't much, but it was safe. Mark helped Leary sit down on the floor and offered her a bottle of water. She drank slowly, her hands trembling. He noticed more things now, thin scars along her arms, a dark bruise near her neck. He felt anger boil in his chest. "Who did this to you?" he asked. Leary didn't look at him, just whispered. "They called themselves traitors." "Traitors?" he said. "More like monsters." She nodded. "They bought me after raiders attacked my ship. I woke up in a cage." Mark sat down beside her, running a hand through his hair. He knew what this meant. Black market slavers, the kind who sold aliens like objects, helping one of their products, could mean life in prison, or worse. He pulled out his datapad and opened a hidden message app. It had been years since he used it, but he still remembered the access codes. He typed a message to someone he once knew. "Rhea, a rebel contact from long ago. Emergency," he wrote. "I found a Zarelli girl tagged and branded. Please advise." He hit send, praying the signal would reach through the jammers. Leary stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" Mark looked at her for a moment, then replied, "Because no one else will." She gave him a small, broken smile, the first he'd seen. Suddenly, a red warning flashed on his datapad screen. Unauthorized device ID detected. System lock. Engaged. His access to the station's internal network was now blocked. Someone knew he sent a message and they had flagged his ID. "They found me," he said out loud, standing up. Leary looked afraid again. "What do we do?" "We hide," Mark said, "and we move fast." He grabbed a spare maintenance suit and gave it to Leary. "Put this on. It'll help you blend in." While she changed behind a curtain, Mark checked the hallway with a mirror stick. No guards. Yet, but it was only a matter of time. He opened the vent hatch in the floor and pointed down. "There's a tunnel system," he said. "Old service shafts, not even on the map anymore." Leary stepped out, now dressed in the baggy gray suit. The hood hiding her silver hair, she looked smaller now, more fragile but also more alert. "Where does it go?" she asked. "To the comms hub," Mark answered. "If we can reach it, we might get a better signal out." They climbed into the tunnel, Mark sealing the hatch above them. It was tight and dark, filled with dust and old wiring, but it was safer than the hallways above. As they crawled forward, Leary asked, "Why risk everything for me? You don't even know me." Mark stopped, then looked back at her. "Years ago," he said. "There was a fire in one of the lower decks. A kid was trapped," he continued. "Everyone else ran, but I couldn't leave him. I saved him, and I never forgot what it felt like to do the right thing." Leary was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "You're not like the others." "No," Mark replied, "and I don't want to be." They kept crawling, but suddenly, voices above through a vent, they heard guards speaking. "Someone helped the girl escape," said one. "High-value target. Orders are to find and silence the thief." Mark froze, holding a finger to his lips. Leary's breathing became shallow, her eyes wide with fear. The sound of boots moved closer, then stopped. A light beam shone through the vent slits above them. They didn't move, didn't breathe. After a long pause, the light disappeared, and the voices faded. They waited 5 more minutes before moving again. Mark's hands were shaking now, but he kept crawling. This wasn't just about breaking rules anymore. The tunnels were colder now. The deeper Mark and Leary crawled, the tighter the air felt. Pipes ran overhead, dripping slow, oily water that echoed off metal walls. The place smelled like rust, burned wires, and old fear. Mark's hands were dirty, scraped from sharp corners, but he didn't care. He had one job now: keep her safe. Leary crawled behind him, still weak but trying her best to keep up. They had passed 3 sealed panels and 2 broken ladders already. Mark knew this route led toward the old signal relay hub, a forgotten part of the station where no one ever went anymore. If they were lucky, They could send a message strong enough to reach the rebel network again. But luck wasn't something Mark believed in anymore. They paused at a split in the tunnel. Mark checked his pad, still jammed, red lights blinking across the screen. No signal, no access, no help. Behind them, a distant metal clang echoed through the pipe system. Leary tensed. That sound, they're tracking us. Could be rats, Mark whispered, though he didn't believe it, not with how careful the steps were, not with how they followed the same rhythm as boots. He pointed to the right tunnel. This way. Faster but riskier. Leary nodded without a word, her eyes focused now, alert and ready. They kept moving, sliding into narrow crawl spaces and stepping over rotted floor grates. Twice, they had to stop as inspection drones buzzed by above the vent grills. Mark covered Leary with his body both times, whispering, "Don't breathe, don't move." The drones moved on, cold and silent, leaving behind only the low hum of surveillance. They reached the edge of a lower engine shaft, a dark chamber lined with broken equipment and power coils. A collapsed floor panel blocked the path forward. Mark cursed under his breath. "We'll have to jump." "It's too far," Leary said softly. "You'll fall." Mark looked down into the black gap, maybe 15 feet across, maybe more. A fall meant broken bones or worse. No coming back, but staying meant capture, or worse, her return to chains. "We don't have a choice," he said, setting his bag down. He stepped back, ran, and jumped. His boots slammed into the other side. Barely grabbing the edge with his hands, he pulled himself up and turned to her. "Now you?" Leary hesitated, staring into the dark space, her fingers twitching. "You can do it," Mark said. "I'll catch you." She backed up, ran, and jumped. Time slowed. Her body floated for a second, then dropped short. Mark reached out and grabbed her wrist. He groaned, his fingers burning, but he didn't let go. Leary dangled above the blackness, legs kicking, but her eyes locked onto his. He pulled with everything he had. She came up over the edge and collapsed into his arms, shaking. "You okay?" he asked, breathing hard. She nodded, barely whispering. "You didn't let go?" "Never," he said, his voice rough. "Never." They stayed there for a moment, just breathing, surrounded by silence. Then something clicked in the shadows. A red laser dot hit the wall behind them. "Run," Mark said, grabbing his bag and Leary's hand. They bolted into the next tunnel as a small detonation blasted behind them. The station shook, lights flickered, pipes burst with steam. Someone had tracked their position and tried to blow. The shaft Mark and Leary slid down a slope into a chamber lined with copper wires and rusted control panels. "This is it," Mark said, panting. "The relay hub." He rushed to a console and began pulling wires and reconnecting ports. Leary watched. The doorway with wide eyes, her body still trembling. "Will it work?" she asked. "It has to," Mark said, sparks flying from a power cable. The screen flickered, then lit up. "Signal found." Mark sent out a burst code, encrypted with a rebel flag. Come on," he whispered, sweat running down his face. Then, a ping, one word appeared on the screen, glowing in blue. "Received." Mark exhaled in relief. They heard us. But the moment didn't last. The walls lit up red. Alarm triggered. Leary looked around in panic. "They know where we are." Mark grabbed her hand. "Then we move again." But before they could reach the tunnel exit, a drone dropped from the ceiling. "Weapons ready." Mark stepped in front of Leary, holding up his plasma cutter like a blade. The drone scanned him, then her, and froze. A voice crackled from it. "Target contains protected genetic code." Mark's eyes widened. "What did it say?" The drone powered down, dropping to the floor like dead weight. Leary's hands were glowing faintly, soft blue light pulsing from her skin. "I don't know what I am," she whispered, "but I think they were looking for me." Mark looked at her, then at the dead drone, then at the dark tunnel ahead. This wasn't just about rescue anymore. The drone lay still on the floor. Its red eye blinked once, then went dark. Mark stared at it, his plasma cutter shaking in his hand. Leary stood behind him, glowing softly, her breath uneven. The light in her skin was fading now, but Mark had seen it. She had done something, and the drone had recognized her. What does protected genetic code mean? He asked, still staring. Leary shook her head. I don't know. But Mark could see it in her face. She was scared, not just of the drone, but of herself. He knelt beside the machine, opening its panel. Inside, a small data crystal blinked. With backup logs, he yanked it out and slid it into his reader. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, showing alerts sent directly to Station Command. They knew someone was down here, and worse, they knew exactly who. We have to move now, Mark said. They'll send more. Leary looked around the old relay room, her voice shaking. There's no exit, just the tunnel we came from. Mark's eyes narrowed. Then we make a new one. He searched the room, found a sealed service hatch in the wall, rusted shut. He fired up his plasma cutter and began slicing through it, sparks flying into the dark. Leary kept watch, her fingers twitching nervously. The air around them felt tight, like the station itself was holding its breath. Above them, the sounds of boots echoed in the shaft. Voices barked orders. Sweep teams. You've done this before, Leary said quietly. Mark nodded. I've fixed this station for 6 years. Breaking it is just the same, with a heavy pull. The hatch fell open, revealing a narrow vertical shaft. The bottom was flooded, but it led toward the outer cargo ring. Mark tied a cable to a pipe and clipped it to Leary's belt. You first, he said. Slide down fast, don't stop. She didn't argue, just gripped the rope and vanished into the dark. Mark followed, hands burning from the friction as he slid down. They landed in ankle-deep water, surrounded by stacked crates and dim blue lights. It was cold here, and quiet. Too quiet. Mark pulled Leary behind a pile of supply containers, motioning for silence. Just then, loud thuds echoed from above. They were sealing the relay room. They had missed their chance by seconds. They're closing off levels, Mark said. They're forcing us out. Into what? Leary asked. A trap? Mark didn't answer, but he knew she was right. Every exit would be covered. Every hallway watched. He looked around and spotted something. A door marked restricted, admin only. He smirked. Perfect. They crept to the door, and Mark hacked the panel using a bypass tool. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a storage room full of guard uniforms. Put this on, Mark said, tossing her a black jacket and cap. She changed quickly, tucking her silver hair under the cap. Mark grabbed one too, and they stepped back out, now dressed like security personnel. They walked through the next checkpoint with fake IDs, heads down, acting like they belonged. It worked, until it didn't. A scanner beeped as they passed and a red alert popped up. Unauthorized biosignature detected. Run, Mark whispered, grabbing Leary's hand. They sprinted as alarms screamed through the cargo level, red lights flashing. Drones dropped from the ceiling, spraying stun rounds. Mark and Leary ducked and weaved between crates, dodging beams of light. A blast knocked a crate over, showering them in debris. Leary stumbled, her leg grazed by a stun bolt. Mark picked her up and dragged her into an open cargo bay, sealing the door behind them. The room was filled with old ship parts and fuel cells. Mark blocked the door with a forklift, panting. We can't outrun them. We're not going to, Leary said, her voice firm now. She stood, weak but determined, her hands glowing again. I remember something, she said. My mother once told me our family carries a light. A weapon? Mark asked. No, she said. A signal. She raised her hands, and the light pulsed outward, bright and soft like a star. The walls shook, the machines hummed, and then silence. The alarms outside stopped. The drones powered down. Mark stared at her, stunned. What did you do? I called them, she said. The ones who've been waiting. Who? Mark asked. She looked up at the ceiling, her voice calm. The resistance. Just then, his datapad lit up. Incoming message. Signal received. Hold position. Help is coming. Mark dropped to his knees, laughing through his exhaustion. But outside, more footsteps gathered, louder now. Help better come fast, he muttered, gripping the plasma cutter once again. The cargo bay felt like a ticking bomb. Mark and Leary stood in the dark, surrounded by old ship parts and dead silence. His plasma cutter was low on charge, Her body was tired from the light pulse she sent out. But Mark's datapad still glowed, with the rebel reply, "Signal received. Hold position. Help is coming." He wanted to believe it, but he knew this station. They had minutes, not hours. Leary leaned against a crate, her breathing uneven. Mark knelt beside her, gently checking the stun wound on her leg. "It's not deep," he said. "You'll be okay." She nodded, though her eyes were distant. "Something's happening to me," she whispered. Mark looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "When I used the light just now, it didn't feel like a memory," she said. "It felt like instinct." Mark sat back, his mind racing. He remembered what the drone said before shutting down. Protected genetic code. That wasn't just random. He took out the scanner from his tool bag, an old model used for machinery diagnostics, but it had a biological scan mode. "May I?" he asked, holding it up. Leary hesitated, then nodded. He waved the scanner over her arm, then her chest, then her eyes. The screen blinked, beeped, and then showed something strange. Genalock. Active. Zirelli lineage. Royal. Classified access required. Mark stared at it, speechless. "What does it say?" Leary asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just someone they kidnapped," Mark said slowly. "You're someone they were hunting." He showed her the screen, and her hands began to shake. "I don't remember being royal," she said. "My family, my ship, it's all blank." Mark stood and began pacing. "If you're Zirelli royalty, and your genes carry command codes or hidden access, they wouldn't just sell you," he said. "They'd breed you, copy you, use your DNA to control others." Leary's face paled. "That's why I was tagged as property." Mark nodded. They weren't just selling a person. They were selling power. Before they could speak more, they heard the whine of a ship engine, low, slow, and distant, coming closer. Mark rushed to the sealed cargo door and peeked through a crack. Outside, guards were gathering and a new ship was docking. A small black cruiser with red lights and no markings. He recognized it. A black market collector ship. Someone high up had come to reclaim the product. "They're here for you," Mark said, voice tight. Leary stood slowly, her body shaking but her eyes steady. "Then we don't let them take me," she said. She looked toward the emergency airlock at the far wall of the cargo bay. "If I get outside," she continued, "I might be able to send another pulse, something stronger." Mark frowned. "That airlock doesn't go anywhere. It's a dead tunnel." "Maybe for you," she said, her voice strange now, like remembering something old. Mark didn't argue, just started cutting the door open. Leary stood beside him, holding his shoulder as he worked. The cutter sparked, metal bent, and the door creaked open. Behind it was a narrow tunnel filled with freezing wind and distant stars. "This isn't on any map," Mark said, surprised. "I told you," Leary whispered. "They've been waiting." She stepped inside and closed her eyes, her skin beginning to glow again, brighter than before. Suddenly, from deep within the tunnel, lights responded one by one. Small circular orbs lit up in blue, hovering and moving toward her. Mark stepped back in awe. "What are those?" "Memories," Leary said, her voice like wind. "Stored inside me, waiting for the key to turn." The orbs surrounded her, scanning her body, and the light from her chest glowed with them. Outside, the guards broke through the outer cargo door. Weapons raised, Mark turned back toward Leary, shouting, "They're coming!" She opened her eyes, now glowing fully white, and raised her hands. A beam of soft blue energy flowed out and hit the ceiling of the cargo bay. It passed through metal like mist, triggering something unseen. Mark's datapad buzzed again. "Incoming transmission, Rebel drop team incoming." ETA 3 minutes, the orbs vanished into Leary's skin and she collapsed. Mark caught her in his arms, heart racing. "I've got you," he whispered. "We're almost out." But the guards were inside now, footsteps closing fast. Mark stood in front of her, ready to fight with only his dying plasma cutter, because now he knew who she was. And he knew one thing more. They couldn't have her, not while he was still breathing. Mark stood in front of Leary like a shield. Her body was limp in his arms, the glow in her skin now dim. The airlock behind them hummed faintly, pulsing with Blue light, but the danger wasn't behind. It was in front. The cargo bay door exploded inward. A team of 6 armored guards stormed in, rifles raised. They were fast, trained, and had one target. "Stand down," one shouted. "Return the asset." Mark didn't move. His plasma cutter sparked in his hand, weak but still alive. "I'm not letting you take her," he said, voice cold and firm. "You're not authorized," the leader growled. "You're a mechanic." Mark stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Then call me a broken mechanic," he said, "because I just broke every damn rule for her." The guard lifted his weapon, but before he could fire, the cargo bay lights flickered, a new sound filled the room. A deep, thudding pulse coming from above. Everyone looked up. Outside the bay window, a black rebel ship uncloaked, massive and glowing with blue lines. It was not standard. Mark stared, wide-eyed. "That's not just any ship," the guards shouted into their comms, panicked. But it was too late. The rebel ship fired. A blast of EMP energy slammed into the cargo bay. The guards dropped instantly, armor short-circuiting, weapons frying in their hands. Mark ducked, covering Leary's body as sparks and debris flew around them. When he looked up again, everything was silent. The guards were unconscious, the lights dim, the bay quiet. A hole opened in the side wall, a rebel boarding pod. 3 figures in dark armor stepped through, guns ready. Mark stood, holding Leary carefully. "She needs help." The lead rebel removed her helmet, revealing a Zarelli woman with glowing tattoos and sharp silver eyes. "We've been searching for her," the woman said, voice soft. "For years." "She's royalty," Mark whispered. "No," the woman replied. "She's more than that. She's a key." Mark followed them into the pod as they placed Leary on a med table. The pod pulled away from the station, zooming toward the larger ship. Outside, station alarms blared, turrets activated, but the rebel ship didn't fire again. It simply vanished, cloaking again like a shadow. Inside the ship, Mark watched as medtechs worked on Leary. They scanned her blood, her brain, her genetic code. "She activated something," Mark said. "Something powerful." "She opened a vault," the Zarelli woman said, "one buried in her memory, passed down by blood." "She's not just a princess," the woman continued. "She's a memory keeper." Mark didn't fully understand, but he knew one thing. She wasn't just a girl in chains anymore. She was something the galaxy forgot. He stood quietly as they stabilized her, her body now glowing steadily again. Later, Mark sat alone in the observation deck, watching the stars slide past the window. He had lost his job, his home, his safety. He had broken laws, defied security, risked everything. But when he looked at her through the glass wall of the medbay, he knew he'd do it all again. Leary opened her eyes slowly, saw him and smiled. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You almost did," he replied, sitting beside her. "But I'm too stubborn." She laughed softly, weak but real. Mark looked down at his hands, scarred and burned. "I'm not a soldier," he said. "I'm not even a hero." "No," she said gently. "You're better. You're the one who didn't run." Just then, the rebel captain entered, her face serious. "We're heading for the outer moons," she said. "We'll be safe. For now." But word's spreading fast. "They know she's alive." Mark nodded. "Then we keep her that way." Leary sat up slowly, her strength returning. "Mark," she said, "I think I remember the planet where I was taken from. And if I'm right, there are others like me still trapped there." The captain's eyes narrowed. "You want to go back?" Leary looked at Mark, her gaze fierce. "I'm not running anymore." Mark sighed, stood up, and gave a small grin. "Well," he said, "I've already broken every rule for you. Let's go break a few more." Stars streaked past the rebel ship as it glided through deep space. Mark stood by the window, staring out in silence. Behind him, the soft hum of the medbay monitors reminded him that Leary was still healing. She was stronger now, her glow returning, her memories slowly piecing together like broken glass. But time was running out. The signal had spread across the black market. Whispers of a Zarelli princess alive, of a living key, reached systems Mark had never even heard of. She wasn't just a missing girl anymore. She was a target, and everyone was coming. The rebel captain entered, handing Mark a datapad. "They found us," she said. "A war cruiser from the trade syndicate just jumped into orbit." Mark scanned the readout, heavily armed, loaded with tracking drones, slavers, and bounty hunters. "They want her back," he said, "badly." "They can't have her," the captain replied, "but we can't fight them alone. Unless she's ready." Mark turned to Leary, who now stood behind him, fully dressed in a sleek rebel uniform. Her silver hair fell across her shoulders, her eyes glowing faintly. "I'm ready," she said. "Let them come." Together, they entered the ship's bridge. The rebel crew stood at attention. Zarelli warriors, human volunteers, and others, who believed in more than credits. Leary stepped forward, her voice clear and calm. "They shackled us," she said. "They called us property. They thought we would forget who we are. But they didn't kill our light." She placed her hand on the ship's command console, and the lights across the ship shifted to deep blue. A message began recording, her voice echoing through every rebel frequency. "To every slave still locked behind a cage," she said, "to every voice silenced in the dark, I am Leary of Zirel, daughter of memory, bearer of light, and I say to the slavers, your time is over." Mark watched as the signal pulsed outward like a flare across the stars. The trade syndicate ship intercepted the message, but it was too late. All across the sector, rebel outposts lit up in response. One by one, signals blinked online, stations unlocked their gates, hidden fighters uncloaked, slaves were freed. The system began to rise. "Here they come," the captain warned, pointing to the scanners. Multiple ships surrounded them, blockade units, armed and moving fast. Mark looked at Leary. "Still want to run?" She smiled. "No. Let's give them something to fear." The rebel ship dove forward, shields up, cannons charging, but they didn't fire to kill. They aimed for engines, for control rooms. The goal was clear. Disarm, disable, disappear. Mark took the co-pilot seat beside a Zarelli warrior and guided the ship through fire. They twisted between enemy blasts, dodging plasma bolts and EMP rounds. Below them, one of the blockade ships exploded, not from rebels, but from the inside. A crew of former slaves had turned on their masters, inspired by Leary's voice. Mark grinned. She really started something. Leary stood behind him, her voice echoing through the comms again. "Every life matters," she said. "No one is property." Not anymore. The remaining enemy ships broke formation, scattering, unsure of who to fight anymore. The rebel ship slipped past them, jumping into hyperspace. Silence returned. Victory. Not total, but real. Inside the ship, Mark sat down on the floor, exhausted. Leary knelt beside him, her hand on his. "You never gave up," she said, "even when you didn't know what I was." He looked at her, smiling weakly. "Didn't matter. You were still someone who needed help." She laughed softly. "You know, back in that crate, I thought the first face I saw would be my last. And then you came." Mark's eyes softened. "You don't belong in chains. Neither do I." They sat in quiet for a moment, just breathing. Outside the window, distant stars burned bright. "Where now?" he asked. She looked ahead. "To the planet where they took my people. To the place where it all started. And if we're lucky," she said, "we'll end it there too." Mark stood, offering his hand. "Then let's finish what we started." Hand in hand, they walked back toward the bridge, together not as mechanic and captive, but as warrior and rebel, as human and hope. And in the stars behind them, the message echoed forever. She was never property, and he was never just a janitor. They were a spark, and the galaxy was about to burn.